Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Aurora Dawn, watching the blue and green planet grow larger on the main screen. After 3 months of traveling through space, they had finally reached Terra 7. The planet looked beautiful, with swirling white clouds and vast oceans that reminded him of Earth. "Captain, we're getting signals from the surface," said Communications Officer Elena Rodriguez. She looked up from her station with excitement in her eyes. "It's definitely artificial. Someone down there is trying to talk to us." Jake nodded and walked over to her station. "Can you understand what they're saying?" "Not yet, sir, but the patterns are complex. This isn't just random noise. There's intelligence behind these signals." Dr. Lisa Hayes, the ship's xenobiologist, entered the bridge carrying her tablet and looking eager. "Captain, the scans are incredible. The biodiversity down there is amazing. I'm seeing life forms unlike anything we've discovered before." "Any signs of cities or technology?" Jake asked. "Oh yes," Lisa said with a grin. "There's a massive structure on the northern continent. It looks like it's made of crystal or some kind of transparent material. It's huge, Captain. Bigger than New York." Jake felt his heart beat faster. First contact with an alien species was what every space explorer dreamed of. "Elena, keep working on those signals. Lisa, prepare your team for surface operations. But we go in peaceful. No weapons except for basic protection." Lieutenant Ben Carter stepped forward. The young officer had been quiet during most of the journey, but Jake knew he was reliable. "Captain, permission to bring Rex with the first contact team?" Jake looked at the German shepherd lying near Ben's station. Rex was a service dog who helped Ben with his anxiety from his last mission. The dog was well trained and calm, but Jake wasn't sure about bringing an animal to meet aliens. "I don't know, Ben. We don't know how they'll react to Rex." "Sir, Rex is part of my team. He helps me stay focused during stressful situations, and meeting aliens is definitely going to be stressful." Dr. Hayes spoke up. "Actually, Captain, it might be interesting to see how they react to Rex. It could tell us something about their culture and how they view other species." Jake thought for a moment. Rex was a good dog, well-behaved and friendly. "All right, Ben, but keep him close and under control." 2 hours later, their shuttle landed on a flat area near the Crystal City. Jake, Lisa, Elena, and Ben walked down the ramp, with Rex walking calmly beside Ben. The air smelled different here, with a hint of something like cinnamon mixed with ocean salt. The Crystal City was even more impressive up close. Tall spires reached toward the sky, and the walls seemed to glow with their own inner light. Jake could see movement inside the transparent buildings. "Captain," Elena whispered, "something's coming." A group of figures emerged from the city. Jake's breath caught in his throat. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, with scaled skin that shifted, colors from green to blue. They walked upright like humans but moved with a grace that reminded Jake of lizards. Their heads were elongated, with large yellow eyes that seemed to see everything. The lead alien wore what looked like ceremonial robes covered in symbols. 2 others flanked him, wearing what appeared to be armor made from the same crystal material as their city. "Remember," Jake whispered to his team, "slow movements, no sudden gestures." The lead alien stopped about 10 feet away and made a sound that was like a mix of clicking and humming. Elena stepped forward and played a recorded message through her translator device. "Greetings. We come in peace from the planet Earth. We seek friendship and knowledge." The alien's eyes widened, and he made more clicking sounds. Then, to everyone's surprise, he spoke in heavily accented but understandable English. "You speak the common tongue. I am High Scholar Zethrin of the Kethvar people. These are Military Commander Vaktor and Science Leader Withara." He gestured to his companions. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison. This is Dr. Lisa Hayes, Communications Officer Elena Rodriguez, and Lieutenant Ben Carter." Zethrin's large eyes studied each human carefully. Then his gaze fell on Rex, who was sitting patiently beside Ben. The alien's eyes grew even wider, and he took a step back. What is that creature?" Zethrin asked, his voice filled with what sounded like fear and confusion. "This is Rex," Ben said calmly. "He's a dog. He's my companion." The three aliens began making rapid clicking sounds to each other. Commander Vaktor, the one in armor, moved his hand toward what looked like a weapon at his side. "Wait," Jake said, quickly. "Rex is harmless. He's friendly." "Friendly?" Zethrin repeated the word like it was foreign to him. "That is a predator. Look at its teeth, its claws, its hunting eyes. How do you control such a death beast?" Ben looked confused. "Control? I don't control Rex. We're partners. We trust each other." As if to prove Ben's point, Rex stood up and wagged his tail. He took a few steps toward the aliens, not in an aggressive way, but like he wanted to say hello. All three aliens jumped back. Commander Vaktor actually drew his weapon, a device that hummed with energy. "It attacks," Vaktor shouted. "No, no," Ben said quickly. "He's being friendly. Look, he's wagging his tail. That means he's happy and wants to meet you." Rex sat down again and tilted his head, looking at the aliens with curious, gentle eyes. His tail continued to wag, sweeping the dust behind him. Dr. Hayes stepped forward. "Slowly. May I ask, how do your people interact with predators on your world?" Zethrin was still staring at Rex in amazement. We control them through technology and fear. Predators cannot be trusted. They kill to survive. This is the way of nature throughout the galaxy." "Not on Earth," Lisa said softly. "On our world, humans and many predators have learned to live together. Some have even become our closest friends." "Impossible." Science leader Wythara spoke for the first time. Her voice was higher pitched than the male's. "Predators serve only their hunger. They cannot feel friendship." Ben knelt down beside Rex and gently petted the dog's head. Rex leaned into the touch, his eyes closing with pleasure. "Rex doesn't just hunt for food. He protects me, comforts me when I'm sad, and plays with me when I'm happy. We take care of each other." The three aliens watched in stunned silence as Rex licked Ben's hand and nuzzled against him. "This is not possible," Zethrin whispered. "In all our travels across the stars and all our studies of life, we have never seen a predator show affection to another species. You humans have achieved something we believe to be evolutionary impossible." Jake realized they had stumbled onto something much bigger than just first contact. They had discovered something about humanity that even they hadn't fully understood until now. "Perhaps," Jake said carefully, "we have much to learn from each other." 3 days had passed since the first meeting with the Kethvar. Captain Jake Morrison watched as his crew set up a temporary research station near the Crystal City. The aliens had given them permission to stay, but Jake could see they were still nervous about Rex and the other humans. Dr. Lisa Hayes was busy unpacking equipment when her communicator buzzed. "Captain, the supply ship Aurora's Gift just arrived in orbit. Dr. Amy Foster is requesting permission to bring down her animals for the ecological presentation." Jake remembered the plan. Before they knew about the aliens, they had arranged for Amy to bring various Earth animals to study how they might adapt to different planets. Now this seemed like either a great opportunity or a disaster waiting to happen. Bring her down, but warn her about the situation with the aliens and predators. An hour later, Dr. Amy Foster stepped off the shuttle with several carriers and containers. She was a marine biologist who had spent years studying animal behavior. Behind her, crew members carried more containers, some making soft sounds from within. "Amy, glad you made it," Lisa said, greeting her colleague. "But we have a situation. The aliens here are terrified of predators. They think Rex is some kind of dangerous beast that we control through technology." Amy laughed as she opened one of her carriers. A small orange cat poked its head out, looked around, then jumped to the ground. "Well, wait until they meet Shadow." The cat immediately began rubbing against Amy's legs, purring loudly. Rex, who was lying nearby, lifted his head and wagged his tail at the new arrival. Lieutenant Ben Carter walked over. "The aliens are coming. I can see them approaching from the city." Sure enough, a group of Kethvar was walking toward their camp. Jake recognized High Scholar Zethrin leading the group, along with several others he hadn't met yet. "Amy, whatever happens, just act natural with your animals," Jake said quietly. The aliens stopped a safe distance away. Zethrin stepped forward, his large yellow eyes immediately focusing on the cat. "Captain Morrison, you have brought more death beasts to our world." "These are our companions," Jake said calmly, "just like Rex." A tall female Kethvar moved beside Zethrin. Her scales were a brighter blue than the others. "I am Research Prime Yathara. We have come to study this impossible phenomenon you call friendship with predators." Shadow the cat, completely unaware of the tension, wandered over toward the aliens. Several of them stepped back quickly. "Look at its claws," one alien whispered. "And those hunting eyes." Amy knelt down and made a soft clicking sound with her tongue. Shadow immediately ran back to her and jumped into her arms. The cat began purring so loudly that even the aliens could hear it. "What is that sound?" Ithara asked, her voice filled with curiosity and fear. "He's purring," Amy explained, gently stroking Shadow's fur. "It means he's happy and content. Cats purr when they feel safe and loved." The aliens made clicking sounds to each other in their own language. Zethrin looked fascinated but confused. The creature makes sounds of happiness while being touched by a larger predator? "Amy isn't a predator to Shadow," Dr. Hayes explained. "They're friends. Shadow trusts Amy to take care of him, and Amy loves Shadow." Engineer Tom Bradley walked up to the group carrying a tool kit. Shadow immediately jumped down from Amy's arms and ran to Tom, weaving between his legs. "Hey there, buddy," Tom said with a smile, reaching down to pet the cat. Shadow rolled over on his back, exposing his belly in a display of complete trust. The aliens gasped. Commander Vactor, who had arrived with the group, stepped forward. "The small predator shows its vulnerable parts to the human. This is a sign of surrender in battle." "No," Tom said, still petting Shadow's belly. "This means he trusts me completely. He's showing me he knows I won't hurt him." Amy opened another carrier, and a ferret poked its head out. "This is Bandit," she said. The ferret climbed onto her shoulder and began exploring her hair with its tiny paws. The aliens were now completely silent, watching every movement. Ithara pulled out a device and began recording everything. "The small predator uses its claws near the human's face," she whispered into her recorder. "The human shows no fear. This defies all understanding of predator-prey relationships." Connor Wells, a wildlife expert who had arrived with Amy, approached the group carrying a large container. "Captain, permission to introduce Luna?" Jake hesitated. Luna was a wolf that Connor had rescued as a pup. She was gentle and well-trained, but she was still a wolf. "Connor, I'm not sure that's a good idea." "She's been in that container for hours, Captain. She needs to stretch and get some air. Besides, these aliens need to see the full range of human-animal relationships." Before Jake could respond, Connor opened the container. A beautiful gray wolf stepped out, looked around calmly, then walked directly to Connor. Luna sat beside him and leaned against his leg. The effect on the aliens was immediate. Several of them made sounds of alarm and moved back even further. Commander Vactor raised his weapon. "That is a death wolf," he said, his voice shaking. "We have creatures like this on our world. They kill without mercy." Luna looked at the aliens with calm, intelligent eyes. Then she did something that made them all freeze in shock. She wagged her tail. "She's saying hello," Connor said softly. "Luna, sit." The wolf immediately sat, her tail still wagging. Connor reached into his pocket and pulled out a treat. "Good girl, Luna." He gave her the treat, and she took it gently from his fingers, then licked his hand. Ithara's recording device fell from her hands. "The death wolf. It shows affection. It obeys without fear conditioning. How is this possible?" Dr. Hayes stepped forward. On Earth, wolves were the first predators that humans formed bonds with. Over thousands of years, we learned to work together. Wolves helped us hunt, and we shared our food with them. Over time, they became dogs like Rex. "But this one is still a wild wolf," Zethrin said, his voice full of wonder. Connor nodded. "Luna was orphaned as a baby. I raised her with love and patience, not fear or control. She stays with me because she chooses to, not because she has to." As if to prove his point, Luna stood up and walked a few steps away from Connor. The aliens tensed, expecting her to run or attack. Instead, Luna picked up a stick and brought it back to Connor, dropping it at his feet and looking up at him with what could only be described as hopeful eyes. Connor threw the stick, and Luna bounded after it like a playful puppy, her tail wagging the entire time. The aliens watched in stunned silence as Luna returned with the stick, and Connor praised her, petting her head as she panted happily. "We call this playing," Amy explained. "It's how many predators on Earth build relationships and trust with each other and with humans." Ithara looked at her companions. "We must study this phenomenon. Our understanding of predator psychology appears to be incomplete." Zethrin nodded slowly. "Indeed. These humans have achieved something we believed impossible throughout the galaxy. They have turned the most dangerous creatures into willing companions." Jake realized that what had started as a simple first contact mission had become something much more significant. They weren't just meeting a new alien species. They were challenging everything these aliens believed about nature, evolution, and the relationships between different species. Shadow chose that moment to jump onto Jake's shoulder, purring loudly, and rubbing his head against Jake's cheek. The aliens stared in amazement as their new human friends interacted with creatures they had always feared. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the center of what had become an outdoor amphitheater. The Kethvar had built crystal seats in a circle around a large, open area. Today was the day of the great demonstration. Word had spread through the alien city, and Jake could see hundreds of Kethvar gathering to watch. High Scholar Zethrin approached with an impressive group of aliens. "Captain Morrison, allow me to present Supreme Leader Keth Moore and War Prime Zakthul." Jake looked at the Supreme Leader, who was taller than the others and wore robes that seemed to shift colors like the ocean. War Prime Zakthul was massive, with darker scales and scars that told of many battles. "Your people have caused quite a stir in our city," Supreme Leader Kethmore said in careful English. "We have come to see these impossible bonds you claim to have with death creatures." "We're honored by your presence," Jake replied. "Today you'll see the full range of relationships humans have formed with Earth's predators." Dr. Lisa Hayes walked over to Jake. "Captain, the supply ship just landed. Everyone's here and ready." Jake nodded and looked at the crowd of aliens. Some looked curious, others seemed frightened, and a few appeared angry. This demonstration could change everything between their species, or it could go very wrong. "Ladies and gentlemen of the Kethvar," Jake called out, his voice carrying across the amphitheater. "What you're about to see isn't magic or technology. It's the result of thousands of years of humans learning to live alongside the predators of our world." Maria Santos stepped into the center of the circle. On her arm sat a beautiful red-tailed hawk named Storm. The bird's sharp eyes looked over the crowd of aliens, but it remained calm on Maria's glove. "This is Storm," Maria announced. "She's a bird of prey, a hunter from the skies." The aliens murmured among themselves. War Prime Zakthul leaned forward in his seat. "That creature has talons that could tear flesh. How do you keep it from attacking?" Maria smiled and raised her arm. "Storm, hunt." The hawk spread its magnificent wings and took flight. It soared above the amphitheater in wide circles, its keen eyes scanning the ground. The aliens watched in tense silence as the powerful predator flew free above their heads. Then Maria raised her glove and whistled. Storm immediately turned and flew back, landing gently on Maria's arm. The crowd of aliens gasped. "She comes back because she chooses to," Maria explained. "I don't control Storm. We're partners. I help her hunt and she trusts me to keep her safe." Research Prime Yathara was frantically taking notes. "The flying predator returns without restraints. It could escape, but it chooses not to. This challenges our basic understanding of predator behavior." Next, Kevin Murphy entered the circle leading a beautiful brown horse named Thunder. The horse was large and powerful, with muscles that rippled under his shiny coat. "Horses were once wild predators in their own way," Kevin explained. "They could easily hurt a human with their hooves or teeth, but watch this." Kevin put his foot in the stirrup and swung up onto Thunder's back. The horse stood calmly, waiting for Kevin's signal. Then they began to move together around the circle, horse and rider moving as one. The large beast carries the human willingly, Supreme Leader Kethmore observed. On our world, our writing creatures must be controlled with neural implants. Thunder and I trust each other, Kevin said as they trotted past the alien leaders. He knows I won't hurt him and I know he'll take care of me. The real surprise came when marine biologist Carl Jensen wheeled in a large tank of water. Inside, 3 dolphins swam in graceful circles. These are dolphins, Carl announced. They're ocean predators with powerful jaws and high intelligence. Carl put on swimming gear and lowered himself into the tank. The alien stood up in alarm as the dolphins immediately swam toward him. He will be killed, War Prime Zak Thul said, reaching for his weapon. But instead of attacking, the dolphins began to play with Carl. They nudged him gently with their noses, let him hold their fins, and even performed jumps and spins when he made hand signals. Dolphins are some of the smartest creatures on Earth, Carl explained, as one dolphin let him scratch its belly. They choose to be our friends because they enjoy our company. The crowd of aliens fell completely silent. Supreme Leader Kethmore sat back down slowly, his large eyes wide with amazement. Impossible, he whispered. Aquatic predators showing joy and play. This defies every law of nature we know. But the biggest shock was yet to come. Connor Wells walked into the center of the circle, and behind him came not just Luna, but 3 other wolves. The pack moved calmly, their eyes alert but not aggressive. The entire alien audience gasped and moved back in their seats. Several guards raised their weapons. These are my pack, Connor said simply. Luna, Storm, River, and Night. They're wolves, the ancestors of all dogs. War Prime Zak Thul stood up. This is madness. Death wolves in a pack. They will turn on you the moment they sense weakness. Connor looked at the massive alien warrior. Would you like to see just how dangerous they are? Before anyone could respond, Connor lay down on the ground in the center of the circle. The 4 wolves immediately came to him. But instead of attacking, they lay down around him. Luna rested, her head on Connor's chest. Storm curled up against his side. River and Night lay near his feet. The silence in the amphitheater was complete. Hundreds of aliens stared in shock as Connor closed his eyes and rested peacefully surrounded by 4 powerful predators. This is trust, Connor said softly. I trust them with my life, and they trust me with theirs. One of the wolves, River, began to lick Connor's hand. Another, Night, started grooming Connor's hair with gentle nibbles. Supreme Leader Kethmore stood up slowly. In all our travels across the galaxy, in all our studies of life and evolution, we have never seen anything like this. How is this possible? Dr. Hayes stepped forward. It's possible because humans learned something very important thousands of years ago. We learned that being strong doesn't mean you have to be alone. The strongest packs, the most successful hunters, work together. But they are predators, War Prime Zak Thul said, his voice filled with confusion. Predators compete. They fight for dominance. Connor sat up, still surrounded by the wolves. These wolves don't see me as competition. They see me as family. And I see them the same way. Luna chose that moment to bring Connor a stick, just like she had done before. But this time, instead of playing fetch with Connor, she carried the stick to War Prime Zak Thul and dropped it at his feet. The massive alien warrior stared down at the wolf, who looked up at him with hopeful eyes, tail wagging. She wants to play with me? Zak Thul asked in amazement. She's offering you friendship, Connor said. The choice is yours. The war leader looked around at his people, then back at Luna. Slowly, carefully, he reached down and picked up the stick. Luna's tail wagged even harder. Zak Thul threw the stick a short distance. Luna bounded after it joyfully and brought it back, dropping it at his feet again. For the first time since the humans had arrived, War Prime Zak Thul smiled. Remarkable, Supreme Leader Kethmore said. You humans have achieved something we believed impossible. You have turned evolution itself on its head. Jake looked around at the crowd of amazed aliens. Perhaps it's time we learned from each other. We'd like to understand how your people interact with the predators of your world. The Supreme Leader nodded thoughtfully. Yes, I believe it is time to show you our Sharmoth. Though after seeing this demonstration, I fear our methods may seem primitive compared to yours. As the crowd of aliens slowly dispersed, many of them were talking excitedly among themselves. The demonstration had changed something fundamental in how they viewed the relationship between predator and prey. But Jake had a feeling this was only the beginning. The next morning, Supreme Leader Kethmore led the human team deeper into the Crystal City than they had ever been before. The corridors here were darker, and Jake Morrison could hear strange sounds echoing from somewhere ahead. What you are about to see, Kethmore said as they walked, is how we Kethvar have always dealt with our world's apex predators. After witnessing your demonstration yesterday, I confess I am curious about your reactions. Dr. Lisa Hayes walked beside Research Prime Yathara, who had been unusually quiet since the demonstration. Yathara, you seem troubled. Is something wrong? The alien scientist looked at Lisa with her large yellow eyes. Dr. Hayes, your people have made me question everything I believed about the nature of predator relationships. I have been studying our methods all night, and I fear we may have been wrong about many things. They entered a vast underground chamber. The walls were lined with metal cages, each one containing a creature that made Jake's breath catch in his throat. The Sharmoth were unlike anything he had ever seen. They looked like giant insects, but with the intelligence of mammals. Each one was about the size of a horse with 6 powerful legs, razor-sharp claws, and mandibles that could easily cut through metal. But what shocked Jake the most wasn't how dangerous they looked. It was how empty their eyes seemed. War Prime Zakthul stood in the center of the chamber wearing heavy armor. These are our Sharmoth warriors, he announced, the most deadly predators on our world. He gestured to one of the cages, and a Kethvar technician pressed a button on a control panel. The cage opened, and a Sharmoth emerged. But instead of moving naturally, it walked stiffly, like a machine. Observe, Zakthul said. He pointed to a target across the room. Attack. The Sharmoth immediately charged toward the target, moving with incredible speed and precision. It destroyed the target in seconds, then stood perfectly still, waiting for the next command. Impressive, Jake said, but his voice lacked enthusiasm. How do you control them? Zakthul pointed to a device attached to the Sharmoth's head. Neural implants. They override the creature's natural instincts and make it obey our commands perfectly. Connor Wells, who had been watching quietly, stepped forward. What happens if you remove the implant? The creature would revert to its savage nature, Zakthul explained. It would attack anything in sight until it was destroyed. Have you ever tried building a relationship with one without the implant? Connor asked. Supreme Leader Kethmore looked puzzled. Why would we attempt such a dangerous thing? These creatures are born killers. They cannot be reasoned with or trusted. Dr. Hayes was studying the Sharmoth closely. Its body language suggests stress and confusion. Look at how it holds its head, how its antennae move. This creature is not happy. Happiness is not relevant, Zakthul said. Only obedience matters. But Yathara was looking at the Sharmoth with new eyes. War Prime, when did we last observe natural Sharmoth behavior in the wild? Why would we do such a thing? Wild Sharmoth are too dangerous to study closely. But if we don't understand their natural behavior, Yathara said slowly, how do we know what we're suppressing with these implants? A young Kethvar scientist stepped forward from the back of the group. He was smaller than the others, with brighter scales that marked him as very young. Research Prime Yathara, he said nervously. My name is Novrim. I have been studying the recordings from yesterday's demonstration. I have a theory about these human-predator bonds. Supreme Leader Kethmore looked at the young scientist with interest. Speak, Novrim. I believe the humans have discovered something we missed. They don't control their predators. They communicate with them. They form partnerships based on mutual benefit and emotional connection. War Prime Zakthul made a dismissive sound. Emotional connection with predators? Impossible. But what if it's not? Novrim continued, his voice growing stronger. What if Sharmoth, like human predators, are capable of forming bonds? What if we've been suppressing their natural ability to connect with other species? The room fell silent. The idea was revolutionary and dangerous. Novrim, Supreme Leader Kethmore said carefully, "Are you suggesting we remove the neural implants from a Sharmoth?" "Not remove, Supreme Leader, but perhaps reduce their power. Allow some natural behavior to emerge while maintaining safety controls." Ithara stepped forward. "I volunteer to oversee such an experiment. Under controlled conditions, of course." Zakthul shook his head. "This is madness. These creatures are weapons, not companions." But Jake could see curiosity in the War Prime's eyes. Yesterday's demonstration had affected him more than he wanted to admit. "What if we started with a young one?" Novrim suggested. "A juvenile Sharmoth that hasn't been fully conditioned yet?" Connor spoke up. "That's how it works with most Earth predators. The younger they are when you start building trust, the stronger the bond becomes." Ithara nodded. "We have several juveniles in the lower levels. They receive minimal conditioning until they mature." Supreme Leader Kethmore looked around the room. "This is a significant decision. If we're wrong, people could But if we're right," Dr. Hayes said softly, "you could discover something that changes your entire civilization." The Supreme Leader was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. "Very well. Novrim, you will work with Research Prime Ithara and our human guests, but extreme caution must be used." 2 hours later, they stood in a smaller chamber. In the center was a cage containing a young Sharmoth, about the size of a large dog. Its scales were lighter than the adults, and its eyes seemed more alert. "This is Zixka," Novrim explained. "She's only 6 months old. Her neural conditioning is minimal." Connor knelt near the cage, studying the young predator. "She looks curious, not aggressive. See how she's watching us? That's intelligent behavior." Novrim activated a control, and the cage door opened. The young Sharmoth stepped out cautiously, her antennae twitching as she explored the new environment. "Now what?" Zakthul asked, his hand resting on his weapon. "Now we wait," Connor said, "and we let her make the first move." Zixka slowly approached Connor, her movements cautious but not threatening. She stopped a few feet away and tilted her head, studying him with large, intelligent eyes. Connor reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of fruit. He held it out toward the young Sharmoth. "Food offerings," Dr. Hayes explained to the watching aliens. "It's how many relationships begin. Sharing resources builds trust." Zixka moved closer and delicately took the fruit from Connor's hand. She ate it quickly, then looked at Connor expectantly. "She wants more," Connor said with a smile. "That's a good sign." But then something unexpected happened. Zixka reached out with one of her clawed appendages and gently touched Connor's hand. It wasn't aggressive or demanding. It was almost gentle. The aliens gasped. Novrim's eyes grew wide. With excitement, She's trying to communicate," he whispered, without any commands or controls. Connor slowly extended his hand toward Zixka. The young Sharmoth sniffed it, then rubbed her head against his palm, making a soft purring sound. "That's impossible," Zakthul breathed. "Sharmoth don't purr. They don't show affection. Maybe they do," Connor said softly, continuing to pet the young predator. "Maybe they just never had the chance." Zixka looked around the room, then back at Connor. She made a series of soft clicking sounds, almost like she was trying to talk. Novrim was recording everything. "This behavior has never been documented. She's attempting social communication with a different species." Suddenly, alarm sounds began, blaring throughout the complex. Red lights flashed and a voice spoke over the communication system. "Security alert. Adult Sharmoth have broken containment. All personnel evacuate immediately." War Prime Zakthul grabbed his weapon. "The adult Sharmoth have somehow override their neural controls. They're acting on their own." But as they prepared to flee, something amazing happened. Zixka moved protectively in front of Connor, spreading her limbs and making defensive sounds toward the door. "She's protecting him," Ithara said in amazement. "A Sharmoth is protecting a human." The young predator looked back at Connor with what could only be described as concern in her eyes. The revelation was clear. The Sharmoth weren't just weapons. They were intelligent beings capable of forming bonds, just like the predators of Earth. And now their adult relatives were free, possibly looking for the same connection their young had just discovered. The alarm sounds grew louder as Captain Jake Morrison and his team rushed through the crystal corridors. Behind them, Zixka followed Connor Wells closely, her small claws clicking on the smooth floor. The young Sharmoth had refused to leave. Connor sighed when the security alert began. "How many adult Sharmoth escaped?" Jake asked Warprime Zakthul as they ran. "7, Zakthul replied, his breathing heavy. "Including my personal mount, Vorthak. He has been with me for 10 years. They reached the main chamber where other Kethavar were gathering. Many looked frightened and Jake could see why. Through the transparent walls, dark shapes moved in the corridors beyond. The escaped Sharmoth were searching for something. Supreme. Leader Kethmore stood in the center of the room, speaking quickly with his advisors. When he saw the humans arrive, he turned to them with worried eyes. "Captain Morrison, my security forces are preparing to destroy the escaped creatures. We have no choice. Without their neural controls, they are too dangerous." "Wait," Connor said, stepping forward with Zixka still beside him. "What if they're not dangerous? What if they're just confused and looking for connection?" "That's impossible," one of the Kethvar guards said. "Sharmoth without controls are killing machines." But Dr. Lisa Hayes was watching the movements outside. "Look at their body language. They're not hunting. They're searching. Their antennae are up and they're moving slowly. That's exploration behavior, not attack behavior." Research Prime Ithara activated a viewing screen that showed different parts of the complex. "Look at this," she said, pointing to one of the screens. "This Sharmoth found the food storage area, but it's not destroying anything. It's just looking." On another screen, they could see a large Sharmoth standing outside the chamber where the juvenile creatures were kept. It wasn't trying to break in. It was making soft clicking sounds. "It's calling to the young ones," Novrim realized. "It wants to communicate with them." Suddenly, one of the largest Sharmoth appeared outside their chamber. This one was massive, with scars across its carapace and intelligent eyes that seemed to see everything. Warprime Zakthul gasped. "Vorthak," he whispered. "My mount." The great Sharmoth stood at the transparent wall, looking directly at Zakthul. Its posture wasn't aggressive. If anything, it looked sad. "He's looking for you," Connor said, quietly. After 10 years together, even with the neural controls, some kind of bond formed. Zakthul stared at his former mount. "But without the controls, he should want to kill me. I have been dominating him for years." "Maybe he doesn't see it that way," Dr. Hayes suggested. "Maybe he sees you as his partner, even if it was a forced partnership." Vorthak raised one of his front appendages and placed it against the wall where Zakthul stood on the other side. The Warprime slowly raised his own hand to match the position. "This is incredible," Ithara breathed, recording everything. "He's seeking contact, not conflict." Connor looked at Supreme Leader Kethmore. "Let me try something. Let me go out there. With Zixka, she can help translate between us and the adults." "Absolutely not," Zakthul said. "It's too dangerous." "Everything we've learned about building trust with predators started with someone taking a risk," Connor replied. "And I won't be alone. I'll have Zixka with me." The young Sharmoth looked up at Connor and made soft clicking sounds, as if she understood and agreed. Supreme Leader Kethmore considered for a long moment. "If you do this, how do we ensure your safety?" "You don't," Connor said simply. "Trust isn't safe. That's what makes it trust." Jake put his hand on Connor's shoulder. "Connor, I can't let you risk your life like this. Captain, this could change everything for both our species. The Kethvar could learn to form real bonds with their predators instead of controlling them through fear. Isn't that worth the risk?" After a tense discussion, they decided to try. The chamber door opened slowly, and Connor stepped out with Zixka beside him. The young Sharmoth immediately began making clicking and purring sounds toward the adults. Vorthak turned toward them first. The massive predator looked at Connor with curious eyes, then down at Zixka. The young one ran to the adult and nuzzled against his side, still making soft sounds. Connor could hear what sounded like a conversation between the two Sharmoth. Zixka was telling Vorthak about her experience with the humans. Slowly, carefully, Connor approached the massive predator. Vorthak watched him come closer, his antennae twitching with interest rather than aggression. "Easy, big fellow," Connor said softly. "Zixka has been telling you about us, hasn't she?" Vorthak lowered his head toward Connor, just like Zixka had done earlier. Connor reached out and gently touched the side of the great creature's head. Vorthak made a sound Connor had never heard before. It was deep and rumbling, almost like a cat's purr but much larger. From inside the chamber, the Kethvar watched in amazement as more adult Sharmoth appeared. One by one, they approached Connor and Zixka peacefully. Soon, Connor was surrounded by 7 massive predators, all of them seeking the gentle contact they had been denied for so long. War Prime Zakthul could stand it no longer. Despite the protests of the others, he opened the chamber door and stepped outside. Vorthak immediately turned toward his old partner. For a moment, both stood perfectly still. Then Vorthak slowly approached Zakthul and gently touched the warrior's armored chest with his head. "Vorthak," Zakthul whispered, reaching up to touch his companion's carapace. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I never understood." The great Sharmoth made soft sounds, almost like he was forgiving his old partner. One by one, other Kethvar came outside. Dr. Hayes worked with Novrim to document everything as predator and humanoid species began forming new kinds of relationships. "This changes everything," Supreme Leader Kethmore said as he watched his people interact with the Sharmoth in ways they never thought possible. "We must rethink our entire approach to these creatures." Over the following days, the Kethvar began a revolution in their society. They removed the neural implants from their Sharmoth and started learning human techniques for building trust and partnership. Novrim became the first Kethvar bondkeeper, spending his days learning to communicate with and care for the Sharmoth. Zixka became his special partner, teaching other young Sharmoth how to interact with the Kethvar. War Prime Zakthul discovered that Vorthak was not just a more effective partner without the neural controls, but also seemed happier and more intelligent. The great Sharmoth began bringing Zakthul gifts, interesting crystals and beautiful stones he found during their travels. 2 weeks later, as the human team prepared to leave Terra 7, they gathered for a final ceremony. The Kethvar had built a new monument in their city center, a crystal sculpture showing a Kethvar and a Sharmoth standing side by side as equals. "Captain Morrison," Supreme Leader Kethmore said, "your people have given us something more valuable than technology or trade agreements. You have shown us how to turn our greatest fears into our closest friends." Jake smiled as he watched Connor playing with a group of young Sharmoth while Zixka supervised. "We've learned from you too. Before coming here, we never realized how special our relationships with Earth's predators really were." Dr. Hayes was finishing her final notes when Yathara approached her. "Dr. Hayes, we have sent word to other species across the galaxy about what we have learned here. Many want to meet these humans who can tame apex predators with nothing but patience and kindness." "Then I guess our next mission is already planned," Jake said with a laugh. As the Aurora Dawn lifted off from Terra 7, Jake looked back at the crystal city below. In the courtyards he could see Kethvar and Sharmoth walking together, learning to be partners instead of master and slave. Rex, who had been sleeping nearby, woke up and wandered over to Jake. The captain reached down to pet his dog, thinking about how this simple act of affection had changed an entire civilization. "Good boy, Rex," Jake said softly. "Good boy." Rex wagged his tail and looked up at his human companion with the same trusting eyes that had started this whole amazing journey. In the vast galaxy full of species who ruled through fear and control, humans had found something better: They had found friendship,